This is Circular Behaviour, a micro-podcast series from the European Circular Economy Stakeholder Platform. This episode is hosted by Claire Downey, Chief Executive of the Rediscovery Centre, which is Ireland's National Centre for the Circular Economy, and Rosa Strube, Head of the Sustainable Lifestyles Team at the Collaborating Centre for Sustainable Consumption and Production in Germany. Both of these organisations lead the leadership group on citizen engagement and circular behaviours as part of the European Circular Economy Stakeholder Platform. In this episode, along with interesting links for further reading, our hosts speak with Dr. Tim Breaker of Vital about the issue of food packaging, its challenges and failures, best practice examples, collaborating with the competitors, and things that might make or break the customer's reuse journey. But not before a few warm-up questions. Let's dive in.
But before we dive into the topic of our podcast, we're going to share in the podcast some outline links to some of the interesting reading and listening that we've been doing in this space. And the first one is certainly local to me, which is a new reusable cup scheme in Malahide and Rush, which is brewing up a greener future. And I'm delighted to share this because it also involves our guest of today, Vital. There is a pilot scheme across 2 Fingal towns that's letting people borrow reusable cups for free and promoting waste-free coffee on the go. And it's aiming in those towns to be completely disposable cup-free by November 2025. So this project's being trialled in Malahide and Rush for 6 months, and if successful, it will be rolled out across the whole of Fingal County Council.
And the second one is from the retail sector, where new trials shows reusable packaging systems can not only meet but exceed the expectations. Both Aldi and Ocado in the UK have trialed refill systems in their shops under the Refill Coalition. The promising results have a rate of 57% in-store use and strong customer buy-in with a return rate of 86%. On top, according to an independent life cycle analysis, the reusable vessels outperform single-use plastics after just 2 reuse cycles. You can find the link to this one and the other one in the show notes.
And now we're absolutely delighted to have with us today Dr. Tim Breaker, and welcome, Tim.
Thank you for having me. Pleasure to be here.
So Tim is the CEO of Vital, a leading provider of smart reusable packaging solutions. The company's based in Germany, but active in 23 countries. Tim, we have so much to talk about today. But before we jump into our discussion on circular behavior change, I'm going to ask you a couple of warm-up questions. The first one being, if you could share a meal and conversation with any person, famous, historical, fictional, who would this be and why?
I don't know if you have seen this on Instagram or other social media, but I think there's an experiment where they ask grown-up people exactly this question, and then they ask their children, and then the grown-ups are really amazed that all their children say they just want to have dinner with mom and dad. And so I choose my family because I don't care who's alive or dead, other than, having a good meal with my family and a good conversation at home. So I think this is the answer I would choose.
And the second question is, what's one behavior change you've made in your own life to support sustainability or reuse? And how has it impacted you or the people around you?
And one thing that I do, and that's now basically a custom also in my family, is that we during weekends take our bag to the bakery. So we don't use the typical bakery bag because we always hand them our bag to basically pack the bread and the pretzels and these kind of things. So a small change, but also a very visible change, and a change where also in the beginning you realize how hard it is for us humans to change habits and to adopt new behavior.
Thank you so much, Tim, for sharing these nice insights. I think it already gives a very nice personal note. Well, with this, let us switch a little bit to what you're doing besides having breakfast and dinners with your family. Can you tell us a little bit about Vital, about what's your mission, and of course also what's been the main steps of the company since it was founded in 2020?
Yes, very happy to. So I started Vital together with 2 of my former colleagues from the Boston Consulting Group, as a consequence on working and researching the circular economy. And I think what became clear for us was that on a planet that has limited resources, limited capability to regenerate, we have to be more resource efficient and we have to be more conscious about this fact, and thus embrace the circular economy as a key lever to for planetary health in the end, and thus also for societal and all of our health. And when we looked at packaging, we saw a dominance of linear value chains. Single-use packaging waste is everywhere across many categories of products. And in our study, we came across that basically whenever a product in its packaging would travel less than 300 kilometers, there's a very high probability that a reusable packaging option is not only more sustainable, but also more economical than a single-use packaging option. And this is what led us to start Vital, with a clear focus on ready-to-consume food and drink packaging, because this is typically where distances are short and also kind of the use of the packaging as packaging is rather short. So what Vital does is really providing reusable packaging solutions that are tech-enabled, that are smart, that are cost-efficient, that are fun, to customers like corporate canteens, restaurant chains, festival organizers, concert halls, stadiums, all these kinds of customers that would typically buy large volumes of single-use packaging for food and drink, and can now choose a more sustainable and a more economical solution with Vital.
Thank you, Tim. While it all sounds like a very simple, impactful, brilliant solution, we know none of this is easy. So you might share then with us, what are some of the biggest challenges or failures that you've encountered trying to get people to adopt reusable packaging?
Yeah, I think so habit is definitely a key barrier for consumers, but also for the people working at our customers, so restaurant staff, people behind bars, and so on, because also for them it's a change in processes, a change in behavior, partly that needs to be done in order to really embrace reusable packaging. And so I think really working closely with them and ensuring that the whole process, the whole every behavior needed around making reusable packaging work from a B2B customer's perspective, from the B2B side, is really, really crucial. And then obviously also highlighting the benefits, not only the environmental benefits, but also other benefits where reusable packaging can really be a value driver. So simply imagine all of our reusable packaging items, they have a unique QR code, which allows us to engage the consumer. So it also allows our customers, so let's say a football stadium, to engage with their consumers, to present sponsors, because whenever the home team scores and the guests scan a QR code on their beer cup, right, they can get a discount for the next beer, or they can win something, or something like that. So really embracing this interaction and highlighting also for the consumers that this particular stadium, this particular club is doing something for the environment.
Are there any other examples or success factors that help shift behavior, or examples of where it worked really well with very particular audiences?
So there's only a certain fraction of the market, both on the B2B side, but as well as on the consumer side, that has a strong environmental motivation and a strong passion for reusable packaging. Reuse legislation can be a successful or a driving force. Obviously, consumer mindset can be a driving force. The economic benefits for the B2B customers is a big thing, of course. And then what we learned is that particularly in so-called closed environment, it's very easy for both our B2B customers, so let's say the corporate canteen on campus, the university canteen on campus, or also the concert hall, the sports stadiums, and so on. In these cases, it's rather easy to implement reusable packaging because you have this closed environment where people typically do consume on the go, but they're not leaving the premises necessarily, and or they know they will return anyways. And so it's very easy for them to also close the logistics cycle and return the packagings. Applying this kind of framework, you look at the quick service restaurant industry and you say, hey, come on, right? I go to a fast food restaurant, I eat on site. Why are they still using single use, right? It should be destined to be reusables. But in the end, there are a lot of switching costs involved for these kind of players to really ditch single use and move to reuse. A lot of processes that need to be changed and so on. And so in this case, given the current regulatory environment, it's not yet economically meaningful or beneficial for them to ditch single use and start with reuse. And here it's definitely a task for the regulators to ensure that we help this industry to change, because in the end, industry will always to some extent follow the economic capitalistic logic. And that's also their role in the system. But then we need to adapt the context in order for them to make the right choice for all of us, meaning a more resource efficient packaging supply chain, which is reusable packaging. And so at Vital, we clearly believe that in a couple of years, for ready to consume food and drink, reuse will be the standard solution. And this will also, of course, then help to get also the last consumers that, don't care about the environment and reuse too.
We, of course, are always very, very interesting in really understanding the consumers' motivations, also behind taking a certain choice. So if you look at the customers' reuse journey, how do you design for that? Is there anything specific you have learned along the way?
Yeah, definitely. So across all the 7,000 gastronomy partners that we have with Vital, we have a return rate of reusable packaging from the consumer of 99.2%. And this tells me that the return is much less of a problem, in fact, than choosing reusable packaging in the first place, in many cases, right? Of course, a more convenient return option always helps. But I think the return rate is already very impressive. And so the question is, how do we get more people in the beginning? And one of the big things is that, a lot of people are already challenged to decide what to eat. And now we also ask them to decide what packaging they want. And in the end, packaging is a typical thing that, a consumer does not necessarily think about and makes an active choice. So our goal is always to make reuse the default solution. A couple of ways to do that. So one is it can be basically the catering authority just saying, if you want to take away food from this place, you have to use reusables. We don't offer a choice. And then reuse is the default. This is basically the case for a lot of corporate campuses, more and more university campuses. It's also done by some entertainment venues and so on. And that massively drives adoption, of course, because if you want to consume and not be on site, basically, or not sit down, then you have to go with reuse. Another thing is that also basically individually, gastronomists decide to charge for single use. So they actually ask the consumer to participate in these externalities, in these external costs that are not priced in the single use packaging price. And thus help them basically make the switch to reusables. And then there are, in these cases, some customers, some end consumers that say, I pay for my convenience, and then they pay the surcharge. And that's obviously a good business also for the gastronomist in that case, because that's 100% margin. And so that works as well. And then the third basically thing is that more and more cities, at least in Germany, are kind of adapting this charge for single use model, where they say, hey, we implement in our city a single use tax. So this means now if you want to use a single use food container, you pay 50 cents extra. but this money doesn't stay with the gastronomist. The gastronomist has to hand it over to the city. And this is also very effective because it also drives and motivates the gastronomists to implement good, well-working, reusable solutions, because they don't want to annoy their end consuming customers, right? And so there's really aligned incentives to switch to reuse and really eventually make reuse the default. And here we see a clear difference in the appetite to make reuse the default from cities where there is such a tax to cities where it's not, from city restaurants in cities where there's no such a tax to closed environments like campuses where it's really one authority and there's some sort of natural monopoly.
It's a great example of how municipalities are supporting that idea. I guess, do you have any examples of how, at kind of local government or municipality level, that bureaucracy has been the opposite, has been a challenge? Or have you seen some different types of supports across different countries or different cities that have different effects?
Yeah, definitely. And I think this is a really a good example, the single-use packaging tax, how cities, municipalities can engage and drive adoption of reuse. And I think it's much more effective than investing into like certain public return infrastructure and so on. Obviously, this also is super important, but I think in terms of prioritization, we should really focus on the adoption and choosing reusables in the first place before thinking about the return, because as long as we achieve return rates that are above 90%, I would say it's convenient enough for the consumer to do the return. And now to your question, yes, bureaucracy is always a barrier for entrepreneurs. In our particular case, looking at different policies across countries where the policy or also maybe have a negative effect on reuse. And in this case, for example, I can highlight the Netherlands, where they basically introduced legislation that gastronomists had to offer reusable packaging. So very similar to Germany. It's better than nothing, but the obligation to offer is really not much in comparison to an obligation to use reusable packaging. And they have accompanied this obligation to offer with the obligation for gastronomists to charge for single use. And now, at first sight, this might sound logically, right? So looking at the consumer, the gastronomist is now forced to charge for single use and at the same time has to offer reuse. So you would think, maybe consumers will then embrace reuse. But in the end, it basically almost killed the reuse market, because they didn't think about changing behaviors on both sides of the table, right? Because the consumer, they would need to actively think about packaging and to adapt their habit to avoid some sort of fee, which was typically rather low. And then oftentimes the consumer didn't even know that there was this obligation to offer reuse and that there was a choice for reuse, because how should they suddenly know that they can demand reusables, right? If everything still looks the same in the store. On the gastronomist side, it was like a gift from the government, because they had to offer reuse. Okay, so you invest a little bit into having some reusable containers there. You don't make them very prominent. At the same time, you suddenly start charging, 10 cents, 20 cents, 50 cents extra for a single-use cup, which you get to keep because it's 100% margin and not a tax. And then you're like, that's very cool. No one needs to change behavior and I make additional money. Great, right? So there was really, it was in the end rather short-sighted to set up a legislation like that and not follow through and making it a true tax where then the gastronomist doesn't get to keep the charge for single use, but has to give it to the government or the municipality. And so in this case, we came in as a reusable packaging solution, talking to the gastronomists, hey, you have to offer reuse, so choose Vital. And then, yes, they offer Vital, but they don't really offer it proactively because it makes much more economic sense for them to stick to the status quo. No one needs to change behavior, convenient, and they make more money. Great. So no chance of for us really to do any business with them. And so we also had to cut the team that we had in the Netherlands, for example.
Indeed, very insightful to see how even well-made legislation can in the end backfire as it did here. Well, now maybe looking still at a different angle of your work, because it's very interesting that with your system you can track exactly how often the cup is used. So can you tell us a bit about the impacts that you have created since launching, and also, of course, if there have been any additional unexpected positive impacts of the reusable system?
That's a big advantage of our system, and also a core belief of Vital, that in the end, if you want to outcompete linear value chains with circular value chains, which are typically more complex and you need more collaboration, and thus it's typically also more costly, you need data and technology. And this is why from the beginning we put a unique ID on every reusable container that runs in our system, whether it's our own or a branded container that is owned by one of our customers. It doesn't matter. All containers in the Vital system have a unique ID and allow us to exactly track how often they're used, what is their real lifetime, and what happens with them, how do they travel. We can do some cool animations, and thus we have proof that we have already replaced millions of packaging items.
On your website, it says, we want to save the world one step at a time by making reusables the global standard. It sounds like you're well on the way to that. But obviously you're not going to do it alone, or are you? Or who would you be joining forces with to grow that impact?
Yeah, no, I think this is exactly the point. And there are a couple of reuse solution providers in Germany, and I mean, I don't know if frenemies is the right word, but certainly I think in the last couple of years we have collaborated much more than we have competed against each other, because we all are part of this 1.6%, where the 98.4% are single use, right? And so there's enough space for all of us to grow and to make good businesses. And everyone still at this point that uses one of our competitors' solution is much more likely also to use our solution, and vice versa. And so I think knowledge sharing, providing access to data, and so on has been a key pillar of us building out Vital. So we collaborate with a bunch of universities and researchers supplying our data, because thanks to our technology platform, we make visible what, for example, the beer bottle deposit system, the water bottle deposit system in Germany can't make transparent because they don't track individual items. And so this has been a big part in terms of, let's say, more closely related to Vital. We really believe that Europe, and in particular Germany, has a location advantage when it comes to reusable packaging, because we have this long-standing tradition of reusable beer bottles and so on. And so we really want to export our technology and our knowledge to the world. And so we work with local franchisees, so entrepreneurs from the different countries, the different cities that license our technology, our brand, that get access to our purchasing conditions and so on, and benefit from our operating procedures in order to build local reuse systems. And Claire, since you're based in Ireland, that's a case in point for a local team really using the Vital technology, the Vital learnings to build up a local reuse system that, of course, is compatible with our European-wide system, where you can indeed borrow a coffee cup in Ireland and return it in Germany. And I mean, it's a total edge case. It's a fun story to tell in podcasts, but these things happen, and they make us at Vital very happy because, yes, that's exactly our ambition, to really build a global system and make reuse the default across the globe.
Thank you for sharing all your experiences and thoughts with us. And at the end of the podcast, we would like to ask you a question we ask all of our guests here. In just a minute, if you could set a simple challenge for our listeners to help them shift towards reusable habits, what would that be?
During the weekends, make sure you have a bag with you, just in case you go to the bakery or you want to shop spontaneously. This is something that I would challenge every listener.
You can find Vital online at vital.org. That's VYTAL.org. Also across all major social media platforms, or you can download the Vital app. Links shared in this podcast can be found in the show notes, and keep an eye out for more podcasts from the European Circular Economy Stakeholder Platform coming soon.